Oof, very hot.
Yeah.
That's here?
Yeah. You go downstairs.
Basement?
You go down.
Okay. I saw you guys go for Pokemon, right?
Yeah, hopefully anyone I think. You? Very good.
No, I don't think.
Yeah,
Everyone's playing.
I will be talking.
That's rare, that's rare.
That's around the corner.
Everyone's coming into my house. Look, they're going like this.
Yeah, everybody talk.
Yeah. So every day, one Pokemon, every day.
Every day.
I think I got enough. Too much money. I have a tournament this Friday.
Right?
Yeah. Big tournament. Yeah.
Maybe open or
No, that's too big.
okay.
No. It's a men's 5.0.
Oh,
In the Stony Hill.
you told me.
Hopefully. I don't know. There are other very good players. I might lose first round, depends on how good I am. They might be the best player. I don't know. Thornhill.
Tony. Just around here.
Yeah. Ben is Shapola. He's from Richmond Hill, Tony guys from Thornhill. Yeah, he's very good, man. Alright, buddy. You good? safe to play today. No, not safe. Too hot outside.
Science says, oh, there's such refinement in institutions. How difficult is it to, why the Nazis are to follow double grid? A lot of the entities, the science tells them whether they have this existential phase, and I'm a prisoner of Nazism or the modernity, and these will never mention it. And they don't have to mention it to sort of complete their degen'es missions. Somehow there's, and what I continue for a reason there's a lot of restrictions or confinement. It almost takes somebody with a different reflex. I may have a different stomach, namely a different stomach note. I can tolerate this sort of nonsense. And this really a blood rhythms level, guys. That's how difficult it is to get through these monsters. Check out the glasses, this one. It's bent at certain degrees. Hideousness. A lot of the smartness is ruthless. And this even for not so much the direct or whether the number is cancers or whether just the cancers, it's quite a number out there. The 1960 generation needs to get more familiar with the 1990 generation. It's utterly nonsense. In a way, it's better because it's more obvious. Whereas in 1960, it's refined down. But in a way, that laid the foundation for this, and being those sort of rooted a lot in the 1990 generation, right? In 1960, is the largest irresponsible group of people, and awkward and whack, right? Lots of helicopter parents. What is that? In a way, it's whack. Because get some beauty, get some song, get some beauty. I don't know there's a single singer that's sort of a helicopter parent. They lack common sense, and have, collectively leaked numbers of whether in major numbers of passive aggressive irresponsible entities, and whether sugar terrorists for it. Now it's a cynicalism. Humans are not pandas. Humans, and whether also humans, and whether humans are not pandas. And with all that restrictions, or whether confinement restrictions, and whether continuous of reasons, rather of whether reason and whether of, and whether reason and whether of, the spiders probably are not remotely dangerous, and perhaps they've been the ones that come in here to rescue us, or at least signal this common threat. This thing is against life. It has desecrated. It's against living forms, whether it's with mine or rather probable sort of. It's against living. It's against living, and it desecrates against life to the point that the very Sauron's eyeball, the very Sauron, the very tree of life has been sort of shattered, or whether the balance has been shattered. Look what happened to my eye. It has deformed. You don't do that to perfection, guys. You don't do that. It's going to be microwave. Not is already strict. You cannot speak the words like weep or guys, please help me, or help me, guys. You cannot really speak towards that direction, sword, right? And the Nazis keep toying around. What is that? What is that? They have no senses. They have the reasoning. And sense is just something we made up. There's no senses actually in this world. It's completely idiotic. I mean, very important to gas them all. I don't have to catch them all. Just gas them all in gasoline modes and speak about you are smart enough. I won't go throughout the way erratic like these, and throughout the way zombified by them, nor recruited towards Nazism. These can keep trying. I'll tell them to try again and gun these down. And it might require a lot of ammos. One of the reasons I'm cutting onto this video is because of the debate as well, sort of transfer, when it was started. Generally, sometimes I don't speak for the entire day, but I also speak because it's not more of telepathic communication. There's something about speak that really, one of the reasons pandas don't do it, or try to do it, or does that similar motion, because it jams it really throws yourself over and does it. It's like doing somersaults on the floor, or whether onto the floor. Not a good habit to have, right? And certainly that amounts to each time someone has to do it, whether they're candidates and whether personnel have to do it, whether does it gives accountable certain trophies, and I'm not compensated for it. I don't mind not compensated for it at all. It's not the worst thing that had happened, and you should be counting at least with the discount, whether with a percentage stack, whether percentage nullifier or modifier ratio amount, whether modifier, whether threshold, all these words. All the words are overusing by this mass amount of Nazis. They blockade, goes to places, invade, passive aggressive flood, no predators. What is that? What is that? You know, sometimes this current social experiment has been whether this current modernity era has been pro-law. You don't need all that to find another Hitler's. Like, I'm right here, guys. I wrote a book, and I corrected what Darwin Smith spoke. As much as there's all that prophecy, perhaps what if one of the prophecy has been a cult, sort of a cult written. That's very large. It's even larger than some of the ones that murdered 34 of their own members, or whether it sent them to somewhere, whether sent them to somewhere together, along with themselves. And then this one results to such hideousness that delayed a lot of stuff. As much as it's not so bad, but neither is the magnitude of hearing, reasoning, thinking, and whether also other, whether recent indicators, whether it was minor, whether and whether recent statements, and whether also whether other statements. Of that virtual magnitude, or whether amount is proportionate to the magnitude of this issue. We don't need somebody who is not super beautiful, or and also at current for its operations, or whether the next nearest days of operation really continue, or whether the next weeks, and whether the next day, or whether another, and whether the next weeks, they're operating at as if they're sort of the crown keeper while not announcing crown. So not being kings, and that itself is not better, it's not more clever, it's sort of lesser bold. They need to exit out and stop going into somewhere and doing this loopity check. It's like, am I not smart? That's not a check, that's a rhetorical question, affirming to the delusion. But they're affirming to that sort of getting into something. Overall, it's not tler'cists violation of something, or maybe perhaps quite a lot of irresponsibility, but then whether not so much of this hideous, or whether this major violations, whether undoings, or whether misdoings, or whether major purposing with the intention to harm as much, because the way the banshees had done a lot of hideous evil. And there are many of types of cases, probably to list them at different locations, being sort of one of the metrics that those type of cases, the case types, probably also to be of, and whether reason to probable, from whether to probably of the possible of whether to probable to be from whether there, and whether to probable to be of, and whether to could be of, and whether there to could be of, and whether to could be of, and whether reason there, and whether there, and whether to could be of. And many of the plans had been, and whether a lot of the doings had been on stack of this sort of, we admit this is right, and that should go as we end. So far it hasn't hit something, then magically Jeebus arrives. Jeebus may not be necessarily a character himself. He may be grafted onto someone. Maybe I am Jeebus right now. And the time that's needed, Jeebus will be there, and it will be interactively sort of needed and not needed, and it will interact and deny his the very occasion that they will be finding Jeebus, but it will be yet interactively so at there, and not so much just digging deeper, whether more in depth of, also on the lateral commission described as also of this interactiveness. And does that kind of similar to infinity and sort of the 50 and 50ness, or whether sort of the sine graph, it doesn't end, it's constant, it doesn't, whether fairly constant, whether it's constant, doesn't reach to 30, it doesn't stay at a constant, or rather it doesn't reach to a sort of goes to the equal 0, or and whether other similar examples. Particularly, they should not desecrate towards life, the tler'cists, because how life form actually works, there's a certain central being that gives the information and stand. Otherwise, it sort of mess things up. If these do that, the worst stuff can happen to others, and will happen to them. And anyways, it's force, not so much be entities. It's not so much personality or other persons. That could be God. But that's sort of an if statement, right? So that it indicates sort of is a force, right? Anyways, it's a lot of it is universal value, and so by logic would be like, oh, is that really? That logic is sort of on the different basis. So whether by logic is not going so much, but by religious understandings, that is. we defaultly have certain intentions, which are these sort of whether reactions, and what are these reactions necessarily just thoughts, and whether a lot of this instantaneous not so much mentioned as a reaction, whether a action, and whether also task and whether choice, are these really choices, or whether reason they're completeness, or whether reason whether tasks and whether actions, are these really choices? Right? How come it's decided that? Right? A lot of the organs corresponds to how it is going to be tested. Before sort of the eye first starts, one person already knows how he looks like. Right? There's a reason why when there's attraction, the heart goes more active. The heart decides a lot of these mating procedures, and whether it finds which feature attractive. It will proportionally always be able to identify what is a female. Unlike something that is sort of like Nazism, these brutalistic insanes. When these are in brutalistic, more of brutalistic states, completely gone. It's not so much they were before in here, or whether, rather whether reason they're completely Nazism. And the reason does not reflect to there is a non-Nazism state, and these weren't Nazism before. These came as Nazism. These criminal spawns that were never rid of. They're given extraordinary amounts, right? Voting rights, understanding how to speak English. In a way, the training of schools were to train them and to train our guys. So where's our guys even, right? I'm like the only guy that's a combination of an intellectual and somebody who's knight. We either today have these macho brutes, and mostly come from peasants, doing the cynical, whether also mostly come from eugenics sort of thing, whether sort of this, and whether sort of the recent generation to the view. And cynically claim, check out how we do the, try to present themselves, but this comes from the very access to these genes, which are kind of as Aryan inventions, are very really great, whether great invention, whether first invention, improved model, whether improved upon, and such, whether then, and whether recently, whether then they improved upon, whether improvement and improvement, and whether another, whether also whether another, whether the later improved upon, whether improved upon. By natural order, these remotely would have gotten these accesses. That itself can be an advanced node, or whether node for advanced topic, whether topics from whether an advanced topic, or whether it connects to, or whether relates with the advanced topic of how, whether reason, or whether reason, or whether nature works in ways to sort of heal itself, right? Sort of like regenerate tissue. Sort of, it doesn't sort of have tissue, and there can be additional, and whether reason, or whether there can be other mentions of whether reason, there can be other mentions, probable to also to for whether there can be other mentions of whether reason, there can be other mentions of. When someone doesn't qualify something, there usually is this favor, and this favor sort of gives the solver to this issue, sort of this natural message. You need to be aggressive, not just sort of calm. And overall, almost everyone is our guys, and they just work in different positions. We're supposed to argue until before I actually point the gun at them, or whether press the new button, and I don't press the new button. It can be the largest reality TV almost. And in this synchronization, whether in this way, then the darkness is sort of more, whether Nazism is more, or whether some opponent, or whether opponent is, and whether it's more of a matter, whether it's matter, and whether it's energy or matter, is more removed, whether it's unvalue or whether unmatter, or whether it's unvalue or matters, whether they, whether matter, more of whether removed, or whether another, or whether more of a removed of. When persons are struck by disappointment, they are going to, they rotate, or whether the wheel rotates, or whether reason that the wheel rotates, or whether the wheels rotate, or whether they go to a position and tribute to certain persons. This very doing of sabotage, of putting a lot of these abominations that are overly delusional, aggressive, is awarding the person that's able to frenzy. As much as life is commonly mentioned, there's a lot of logic, even if from whether a lot, whether even and whether from our guys, and whether they're associates, and some of them may be mixed in with some current, and whether also a bit more extremist growth, and therefore whether also a bit of whether more of whether a bit of whether some of whether a bit of Nazis, our guy, and whether Nazis admit these, whether they, with it's already been settled actually, whether it's already been settled before. If the candidate is of health, he will be already whipping up to a frenzy. So it's a bit of a candidate selection there. It's not so much of actually going into frenzy, but sort of something you're supposed to have, or whether it's sort of default. A regular person that's sort of having that advantage, it's sort of alright. But they sort of all have it. It's pointed to different direction, whether on the magnitude of certain merits or whether certain ways of approach and check upon it is a bit different. A reason there of whether other variants or whether other measures and whether also other descriptions probably also take a bit. Prince Charming. One man is given whether the Prince Charming have the similar code as every other female. Isn't female overall together doing great work in a way? I mean, I'm still here, and I think I'm gonna be around for 50 years. If I'm not the chosen one, then I'm probably not the chosen one, but likely I am the chosen one, and the road ahead troubles, and I'm supposed to be going through the way, not in such a way. Do I sound really like a lot of females? Perhaps there's a thinking and trait similarities. There's a lot yet to be told, and we may finally reach to where peace is finally there. The stuff is stabilized. We fully dominate. And it really checks out, whether it really verifies. Because if we check on, but the books just happened to them. But notice, it's just that we found it, or whether we sort of have to stomp up one place, or we sort of have to reach a bit, and whether at least a bit of a weather, especially when and whether compared to sort of not as reach, you sort of had to reach, or sort of having the meal directly in front, sort of had to reach, probably also gather. At the gather can be considered probably considerable as it whether considered from previously someone did it and then sort of transferred. So the action of the next person now may not be as much, but with that countavle, it's fairly of sort of relative proportionate, whether amongst other measures. And it all could yet to be sort of someone doing extra excessiveness, or whether doing of others but not really doing it. And by the way, mentioning of the word excessive does free the person from being excessive. We have even our guys that are not going to control themselves. It is not really even during that, whether it's not going to be really self-realized. There's a particular reason we like to find partners working teams. Even when we're not actually even individuals, we're not individuals, right? We're members of the team. And there's a lot of this default correlation that if it doesn't happen, the person goes different and almost insultful to the way he respects to a lot of the values, whether respect a lot of the respect coins he gives, and whether a lot of respect and whether a lot of idolization towards various ancient forces, and whether to various forces. This is a particular reason persons tend to gather to places and engage. Not a lot of the problems come from the regular folks. The recent example there. Vastly of the issues come from the Nazis. Nazis are now, and whether mostly are not from our guys, that are embedded there to do certain stuff. There may be sort of some bit of remainders of some living essence within them, but they're mostly brutalist. It's better and compared with some external factor. So having them murder something as a video to get the external factor. They do tons of anesthetic splits. As much as life is sort of his thinking and thoughts, and as hearing communication reflex, but a lot it's already preset. There seems to be some forces that, or whether it's already one person, or whether this enterprise can, or whether the person, and whether in character, and whether also in character, whether reason, and whether in character can edit itself and prepare for certain situations. It will naturally give this reaction. So these ones don't even have to know what to do. They already understands. For example, they notice there's a casino. They know there's a leader that doesn't have, whether it's a more hidden type of, doesn't have a life, or whether it doesn't have a family specifically. Recently, would another factor being whether can be a bit of overusing, and whether also a bit reserved. Reason there either for reason there whether reason there proable could be whether also suitable for whether and whether also and whether at first the proable also suitable and whether probable for and whether probable for and whether reason whether reason and whether it's probable and whether it's probable for and whether probable for to be of. The largest social experiment may have gone wrong, and at least probably on whether reason at least have probably gone prolonged. Camera better be out, and also and whether because there and whether there's not and whether reason and whether and there's not and whether to probable for also to be whether to probable whether to also to be from whether to probable to be to probable for also to be and whether to probable to be of. Because of and whether because of whether because of in particular there's not a sound file whether sound record app there on right now, whether reason there's not a sound record app, whether sound record app they're on right now. It is as indicated by the red thing, whether this here behind the taskbar or some other, or whether there's some task the column or sort of hyphenated column, whether there's some horizontal column, whether some horizontal stuff, or whether a row there, row on the street. Recently, for a rhetorical remark, whether rhetorical question, whether also amongst other, whether also in the other fields of whether of proable to be recently optional for proable, but also to be for whether proable to be whether another proable to also to be from whether at first of proable but also to be from whether a minor whether it's proable to be recently and whether there are a bit of override for the proable for the suitable from whether to be and whether to suitable and whether recently and whether suitable with the word suitable for within and whether with bracket marks. It's sort of a social experiment gone wrong that doesn't still register to right. Okay, so it's sort of a wrong of a, and whether it's sort of a double wrong, sort of wrong on wrong, or whether wrong of wrong, or whether it's sort of a double wrong. And it might be, it actually is, or whether it's wrong, whether it still does it, but I may be stating otherwise, or I may be completely denying this, and I don't even know why I did it. Right? So there's, and whether there is a certain regret I do have. For example, I'm not really going to nuke everyone, unless sort of I pass away and someone else will nuke this whole place. Because I think all living beings are together to do something great. And I'm not stating this because I don't have the nuclear bombs yet. That's sort of intuitive or something. And the most stabilized format of something is slavery. And by the reason that, by the way, most stabilized form of society is slavery. We only need a pinnacle elite, whether great rulers, and then the rest being slaves. And that will actually result in not a single word of slavery mentioned, whether sort of in that negative, whether in that Nazism context, and whether not in that Nazism Nazi context, and whether Nazism context. Once I'm supposed to sort of fondly describe something, it's profanity, a word overusing countavle. After disappointment, a lot of folks does things that in reason there can be of a brief and whether also summarize of whether reason of summarization to probable also sort of and whether to probable also to be to probable for also to sort of from whether to probable to be of whether reason there to probable also to be attributes to certain cause of whether thus tasks that results whether numerous actions that results to, and whether also action sets that results to the great one from the sending. Right? They do make choices, and they're in ways conscious. They have some skills at level at poker area, so they should be reserved. And what really should be tackled upon here is the each person being forgiving of others, and whether mention efforts of, and whether efforts of relentless at sort of giving to a cause, and whether forgive self, and whether give oneself, and whether forgive self to a great cause, and not live as if they're eternal. And either way, also consider self, and whether also, and whether consider self, and whether also, and consider whether, and also consider, and whether consider self, and whether also consider, and whether another, and whether consider if self is 100, lives 100 infinite years. Each year is infinite. And thus infinite comes to an end. It may not come to an end, but compared to infinity, it may sort of does that match. And perhaps that's what happens mathematically, or whether that's what happens there. Whether being a one of, that's what happens there. And whether reason there, and that's one of what's happened there. The probable for a recent of, and whether recent, whether recent of the probable for the could be of, whether recent of, and whether recent of the probable of. And the natural courses, there will be development, there will be changes, but none of these changes will be unlike having to deal with, unlike with the previous phases, whether previous periods. Right. Having understanding, sort of forgive, whether give and whether forgive oneself to causes, whether to another cause, and whether to a new cause, and whether to another new cause, or whether to a cause, and whether to causes may not be, and whether reason there, approaching from whether reason there to causes, and whether to a cause may not be all that difficult. It simply requires, and whether reasons it's sort of within. It's a subset of whether it's within understanding. Because having the data oneself is not going to live forever. What should one then really devote to? Wait a second. I recently mentioned about how to have this established, one had to fight Nazism. So perhaps I'm very biased against Nazism. Once in the battlefield may not be such a mention of hero format, but I'm constantly, I think I'm pretty fair. Whether reason there, just a sort of comparative described to as blank, and whether of reason word as between whether with bracket positive, and reason, and whether reason as a rhetorical, whether rhetorical expression of probable from whether probable could be considered, whether reason there repronunciation of probable to be considered.